Video, check. Desktop, check. Coffee, check. Water, check. Cat, check. Fun, double check. This is a Daijobu Kuma production. My name is David Morgan. This is the second of 4 videos on design principles of repetition, rhythm, order, and harmony. We're going to be covering rhythm. In my previous video, the first one on repetition, I talked about how patterns are easy to see, but the danger is static patterns can be dull, so it's better to vary the patterns to make them more interesting. Rhythm is one of those things where it's easy to describe, but it's difficult to explain. I think it's because we've lived with it all our lives. It regulates so much of what we do, we take it for granted. This is a great opportunity for the designer, the graphic artist, the artist, to look around and see how design affects people and how people affect the design in turn. Neither of them exists alone. Rhythm is a human concept, and so we need to keep in mind that while there are repeating cycles occurring in nature all the time, we are the ones who call it rhythm. For the purpose of this video, we're going to go with a functional definition that rhythm is the number of times a design element is repeated. Now, I know there are many other definitions available, but we're working here with printed and web media. On a personal note, I think that rhythm as a design concept is almost endless in its applications. I suspect a person could actually build a career in graphic arts using only rhythm. It's that important, as the cat walks across my keyboard. I find myself that I prefer using balance and harmony with just a dash of asymmetry, excuse me, the cat distracted me. But rhythm is what makes this mix work. Now, rhythm is just like music. It's a beat. But a steady, monotonous beat can be dull. We need to vary the beat to make the design more interesting. One of the ways we can do that is in terms of frequency. This can be either how close the design elements are to each other by manipulating the space between them, or how wide the design elements are to each other. The space is the same, but the width of the elements will vary. We can also think of rhythm in terms of size. Here we have items that are equally spaced, but they go from small to large and then large to small again. We can then set that up as a cyclic process, as you see here. And we can even take advantage of this by combining it with contrast through color to come up with an even more interesting pattern. Let's grab this one. We're going to Control, Copy, Control, Paste. Then we're going to move it down just a little. Now what I want to do is change its color to dark green. Hello, dark green. Oh, that's right, it's a line. So we change it to this slightly different color. If you heard the noise in the background, that was the cat falling off of something. So we then move the pattern, as you can see, shift its position. So we're creating almost like a second frequency. And then let's move that up a little bit to make it more pronounced. There we are. So you can see we've created an almost secondary frequency by just simply combining the differing rhythms of these two designs. We can also take advantage of frequency in terms of space. In the previous slide, I showed you how frequency can vary in terms of the space between the design elements. Here, if we take the design elements and place them on a curve, still using that rhythm of spacing, you can see that we create an almost energetic design with just a few simple elements. We'll start with a simple pattern, a basic matrix. It's orderly. It's even in some ways harmonious, but there's nothing happening. It's static. It's just sitting there. So what we can do is introduce an element of rhythm into it, such as changing this here to a different color. We could change it perhaps to a different size, just like I talked about in repetition. But for here, we're going to just focus on color. Now that's working well. So we've got a basic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we can go all the way through here, and then we can create another beat here, like so, changing that again to dark green. And we can alternate like that. And that's working very well, and that's suggesting an idea that we have a rhythmic pattern, because this one is irrhythmic. Yes, no, yes, no, yes. Instead, we make it completely rhythmic, symmetrical, like so. So we have a very nice, basic rhythmic pattern, repeating itself in a constant cycle. But the danger of this, well, a moment here. We've got a basically good idea. I'll get into the problems in just a moment. We've got basically a good idea here. We can balance it out even further by bringing in another element, like so. It's also square, but it's a darker color. And we can center it, or a trick that I like to use is to place it slightly off center to generate a sort of visual tension. So we have this object, large object here, balancing out the smaller objects in counterbalance to the green rhythm that we've established. It's a nice pattern. It's a good rhythmic composition, and it's actually kind of peaceful in a specific way. And so we've got something that's very good as a functional layout for printed or web media. It's balanced, it's orderly, it's harmonious, with just a pinch of asymmetry here to make it interesting. Now for the bad news. What we have just created is one of the classic mistakes in graphic design, where you're using only one or two design elements to the exclusion of all others. So as a result, it is repetitious, it is in fact monotonous, and a highly technical term that we use in design for something like this is dull. Let's start over. First of all, we'll get rid of this, and we'll get rid of these. The problem lies in fact with the background pattern that we set up. Instead, let's start with the basic idea that we had of the rhythm. So first of all, we'll change these back to the color they were before. So we started out with a good idea, but instead of making it a regular rhythm, let's make it irregular. So we go here, and we do this, and this, change that, and change that. So some of you can probably see where I'm going with this right now. We've got a rhythm established of the 5 here and the 5 there, the 4 here, the 4 down here, the 3, the 2, and the 1, and so forth, as you can see. So we've got a slightly irregular rhythm, but it is a rhythm. It is balanced in its composition. So then we can take advantage of that even further. If we're doing something for printed media, what we can do instead is set up, well, let me show you here what I'm talking about. It's easier to show you than to try to spend a whole bunch of words to explain. We take that and take it to there. And we'll go ahead and we'll bring that to the front. We do the same thing with this here. We change it to blue. You can see where I'm going here. I talked earlier about the 5, the 4, the 3, and such. So then we take this, bring it to the front, turn that blue. Then we take that. There we go. And leave that the way it is. So now we've got this rhythmic composition set up here. And so what we're going to do is going to grab this. There we go. We're going to Control Copy. This, by the way, is being done in LibreOffice Impress, which has the same vector drawing capabilities as LibreOffice Draw. Then we're going to take this and we're going to flip it horizontally, like so. And then we're going to take it, we're going to flip it vertically. What I'm doing essentially is creating a mirror of the other pattern. There we go. Now, if we leave it with the blue and the green, we've got a fairly good composition. but we need to create more of a visual tension to help draw the eyes to the blue areas. So instead of the green with contrast, we'll contrast with white. So we go in and essentially remove the green. A big advantage of this is now the design elements are very, very simple, but very visually appealing at the same time. But we need to do something to help add contrast. We need to put a little more rhythm in there because it's still somewhat static in its composition. Now, one thing that we can do is to change these squares here. So we're going to grab this item right here and make use of it. We're going to make the changes with that. Now, we can change this in essentially three ways. We can change it in terms of shape, we can change it in terms of color, or we can manipulate the border that's attached to it, the border of the box. Now, I fully realize that there are many, many other ways that we can create contrast: size, orientation, alignment, depth, shading, etc., etc., etc. For the purposes of this presentation, we're going to be using these three. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color and I'm going to remove the border. Now, we don't want to do something that is really gauche, too glaring as obvious. What I want to do then is to just simply change this to a different blue. For example, if we go back to the sky blue here, and if we remove the border, as you can see, there is a marked difference. It's not something that the person looking at it has to search for. It's one of those things that's obvious, so you don't really think about it. Now, at this point, we're still asymmetrical. We're a little bit unbalanced. And we want something that will be arrhythmic but eye-catching. So we're going to do a kind of counter rhythm, and we're going to change this one to a lighter color and remove the border, like so. So then if we've got printed media, you'll often see this in advertising, for example. You present a situation, you suggest a possible solution. Wouldn't you rather be in Hawaii, for example? And then down here, fly whatever airlines. And then down below could be the logo, for example, of the airlines in a little blurb. Now, if we want this to be a little bit more eye-catching, what we'll do is we'll change this back to the blue. We will restore the border so that it matches the others. But we're going to be a little bit more arrhythmic. We're going to change this one here. Remove the border, just like we did with the first one. There. Now we have something that is much more eye-catching, and it's easier for the reader to then make the transition to the next item. So what we've got then is we have a design that is both orderly and yet rhythmic at the same time. So here, rhythm helps to harmonize the design. It makes it more eye-catching, and very important, especially with printed or web media, it makes it more readable. I would very much like to thank you all for watching this video. This was done within LibreOffice, and I have to tell you that I think that it is awesome. It is an incredible piece of software. It is very versatile in its applications, and the simple interface makes it very useful. And most important of all, it's completely free. So I urge you to check it out. I also would like to give a shout out to Cam Studio Recorder, another free piece of software that made this video possible.